So here we are at our final lesson. And what we want to do today is we want to recap and put together everything that we've learned so far. Remember, we started in the first lesson talking about ownership and stewardship. Remember, everything that we have ultimately belongs to God. He's the true owner. Our financial resources, our intellect, our opportunities, our family, our country, we didn't choose any of those things. We were born into it. It's a blessing from God. But remember the principle of stewardship, that He's given us these resources that are under our control. We get to choose how we use the financial resources that God has given us, but we're also accountable and responsible for how we use them. So with that in mind, that should shape how we view money, should shape how we treat money, and it should encourage us, it should challenge us to want to be wise money managers for the Lord. So let's talk about how to develop your one-page financial plan. What does that look like? Well, first we start with our financial why statement. Remember the questions that we considered in lesson 2? What about money is important to you? Think 5 years down the road. What needs to change in order for you to feel more healthy in your relationship with money? What if you did have $20 million? What if you only had 10 years left to live? How would that change how you live your day-to-day life? And we wrote down a statement, a sentence or two. The role of money in my life is blank. And what we need to do is at the very top of our one-page financial plan, and you'll see that in your participant guide, I want you to write that financial why statement. The next section is our goals. And remember, a goal is not just a wish. A goal is something that has a specific framework around it. And we talked about the SMART framework: specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time-based. Make sure that our goals flow directly from our financial why statement. Just like the compass that points us true north, what are the next logical steps that we need to take in order to make that a reality? And then we spent a few weeks looking at the give, live, owe, and grow buckets. And yes, as you see in front of me, you've already been distracted by the M&Ms. We're going to give a little bit of a visual to help you to understand what that looks like practically in your own life. But as we consider how much is going to generosity, how much is going to our day-to-day spending, how much is going to taxes and debt, how much is going towards saving and investing, and does that align with our financial why statement, or are there tweaks that we need to be able to make? And so here's what you'll do with your one-page financial plan. Have your financial why statement at the top, have your goals in the middle section, and at the bottom, have your financial buckets, your 4 financial buckets, your give, live, owe, and grow scores. And then what you're going to do is periodically, on a regular basis, review those. I'd recommend at the most once a quarter, and at the least once a year, but have regular intervals. Put it in your calendar. Sit down and review where you're at. Review your financial why statement. Is this still true in my life, or have things changed? Review your goals. What have I accomplished? What can I cross off the list? And as you cross off those goals, ask yourself, what are the next logical steps? And use the SMART framework to create new actionable goals. And then look at your cash flow scores. Do they accurately reflect how I want to be spending my money in these different 4 buckets? Okay, so let's take a moment and let's look at how most people treat their cash flow buckets. How does most people's cash flow work when they don't have a plan and don't have any intentionality? Let's let this represent our income, and this is going to be our take-home income after taxes. The first thing that most people do is they'll go right for their O bucket. Their debt, mortgage, car loan, credit cards, student loans, these are non-negotiable. We have to pay them, so that's going to come first. So we'll set those up, and that's going to be a large chunk of our monthly income. By the way, when it comes to O, I would include your rent as part of your O bucket as well, even though technically it's not a loan, it is an obligation, and you can't go very many months without paying your rent. So let's put that in the O bucket. Then they're going to come to their live bucket, and they're going to pay their needs and their wants, their utilities, their gasoline, their groceries, their phone bill, all of those things they're going to pay next. And that's going to be a pretty large chunk of their income as well. Okay, but we still do have a little bit left. What comes next? Well, what about our wants? What about entertainment? What about going out with the family? What about going out to eat? What about our hobbies? What about shopping? What about Amazon? What about Target? What about Walmart? What about all the random things that we need throughout the month? Those come next. So that's going to be a large chunk of what's left over. Now, let's say maybe a little bit, they're doing 3% into their 401k, so there's a little bit that goes here, but really at the end of the month, what we find is there's really not all that much left over. And so the way that a normal person's cash flow works is they pay what they have to pay in the O category, they pay their regular living expenses, maybe they save a little, but after the month is said and done, there's really hardly anything left over, if anything, to go towards extra saving or towards giving. So then what comes next? Well, what most people do is they say, well, the reason that I can't save and give to the extent that I want to is I just don't have enough money right now. When more money comes along, then I'll save more, then I'll be more generous. So eventually they get a raise, they get a promotion, they get a second job, they move jobs, spouse goes back to work, and all of a sudden now there's more income. More is in the income bucket. So now what are they able to do? Well, we start over with the O bucket because they haven't changed the order. They still come here and they'll pay their mortgage and their student loan and their credit cards. But now, actually, they've gotten a new car because after all, we can afford it. We have some extra income and that's a few $100 extra each month. So there's a little bit more going to the O bucket. Then they come back to the live bucket. We have our regular expenses, utilities, gas, clothes, all the things that we have to pay for. And so we're gonna go ahead and do those. And then what about our wants? Well, we're still gonna be going out to eat. We're still gonna be doing activities and have the kids' sports, and we have to do maintenance on the car and all these different things that come along. And in fact, actually, we're spending a little bit more because, hey, again, we have more income, we have a little bit more space, we can do a little bit more of these things, and so we spend on our wants. And then eventually what happens? Oh, well, kind of the same thing. Well, we have enough to do our match at our 401k, and oh, well, once again, where do we end up? Kind of the same scenario. Do we have anything left over to forgive? No, not really, because there's really not much left over at the end of the month. Do we have more for save? Well, no, not really much more than what we're doing already through the paycheck, and so we start all over again. And then what inevitably happens is, even in the times where there is a little bit left over, then what happens? Even when it looks a little bit like this, and it looks like, oh, looks like this month we will have a little bit extra to give. We will have a little bit extra to save. But then the unexpected comes up. Oh, you know what? We had to take the car into the shop this month, and that was $400. And oh, kids had an emergency dentist visit, and that was $600. And oh, we had family come into town, and we did a lot of things with them this week, and so we spent a little bit more than we normally would, and so this goes here. But next month it'll be better. Next month but what inevitably happens, there's always going to be things that creep up. There's always going to be a reason to go ahead and spend more. I would submit to you, we need to change the order of our cash flow buckets. The reason that a lot of people feel like they're not able to get ahead, not able to save to the extent that they want, and not able to give to the extent that they want, is they've got the order all wrong. So instead, we need to rearrange the buckets. Here's how I would recommend you to think about the flow of your cash flow buckets and the order to put them in, and how to prioritize your cash flow in the right way so that it allows you to do the things that are most important. We take our income, and the first thing we want to do is we want to start with our give. How much am I going to give? 10%, 15%, 7%, whatever that number is. And we talked about how to measure that and how to make a determination in your own mind to say, hey, here's what I'm shooting for. Here's how much of my cash flow I want to go towards generosity. And we're going to put that first. We're going to make that automatic. It's not going to be a question. We're not going to wait till the end of the month. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to move to grow in our savings. The first thing we want to do is get our employer match, first and foremost, because that's free money. If it's a 3% match, a 5% match, a 7% match, Whatever we put in, if our employer is doubling it, it's an immediate 100% return, and we can't turn that down. Now, next, what should we do? The only time that we should flip the order here and move and go to our O before we put more in our grow is because we have high interest debt. Remember, if we have high single digit or double digit interest, particularly in credit cards, we want to pay that off first. So if that's the case, we want to scrape together as much as possible, as much as we know that we can, and we're going to put that towards O and pay off our high interest debt. And we're going to skip over putting more in savings for now because we want to get this paid off first. Now, what if you don't have high interest debt? Well, the next thing you want to do is you want to build up your emergency fund. Before you start saving for retirement or anything else, you need to have that buffer in place. And if you don't have 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses, you need to prioritize that next. You're going to take as much money as you know how to scrape together on a monthly basis, and you're going to put that in the grow bucket. But remember, we're not going to put that in stocks. We're not going to put that in our retirement account. We're going to put it in a high yield savings or a money market, something that pays us interest, but it's liquid and it's accessible and it's there when we need it. And we're going to build that up next. Now, if our emergency fund is fully funded and we don't have high interest debt, then we're going to concentrate on putting 10 to 15% of our income towards retirement in that grow bucket. If and when that is done, now anything extra that we can save, that can go towards kids' college, towards a house down payment, towards any other short or long-term savings goals that we have. But that's the flow, that's the order in which I'd encourage you to go about it. So now that we've done our give bucket and our grow bucket, now with the rest of this money, now we're going to go to O and to live. Well, O, that's pretty simple. What do we have to pay? Well, we have to pay our mortgage. We have to pay any outstanding loans that we have, and so that's all going to go here. And now, with the rest of this money, this is going to go to live. Sure, we have gas, we have groceries, we have utilities, we have all the things that we have to pay, and we're going to go ahead and allocate towards that. And amazingly, when this is all said and done, what we're going to find is after we've given, after we've saved, after we've paid our debts, and even after we've paid for our necessities, there's going to be some left over. And the reason so many of us struggle with doing it in this order is we fear not having money to do the things that we like to do. But here's the problem with that. We are scared that, oh, won't I have any money for fun? What about the things I want to do? What about going out to eat? What about enjoying time with my friends? What about going on vacation? Those are all great things to do. But if we prioritize those first, these things will never get done. But if we prioritize the most important things first, our give and our grow, there will always be room left over for some wants in that live bucket, and that's what we'll spend that on. And here's the great liberating thing. When you get to the end of the month and you've already given and you've already saved to the extent that you want to save, all that other money you can do guilt-free. There's no pressure. There's nothing weighing on you thinking, should I be doing this right now? Is this okay for us? See, so many people that I talk to, they spend money and they have such anxiety about it because they feel like every time they go out and do something that they want to do, they're doing it at the expense of something that they should be doing. But when you take care of the things that you know to do first, all of a sudden now this frees you up to enjoy so many of these other things in a great way that you never were able to before. So many people spend all their money living and owing instead of giving and growing. But if you'll give and grow, you'll always have room to live and to owe. Does that make sense? So put the most important things first, and that frees you up to be able to take care of the things that you also need to without having that guilt and anxiety hanging over your head. So I hope in these series of lessons, what you've discovered is that wise financial management is not about a playbook or about a formula. It's not about 5 secrets or 5 steps that you need to do and then all of a sudden your money problems will be forever solved. It's about changing your attitude. It's about changing your perspective. It's about seeing money the way that God sees it, from an eternal perspective. And once we can frame our attitude and our approach to money in a healthy way, man, it frees us to be able to enjoy it on a much greater level. It frees us to be able to be generous and be used as a channel, as a pipeline of God's blessings in the life of others. It frees us to be able to grow and put money to use and make money work for us to save for the near and long term. It frees us to be able to take care of our responsibilities and our needs, the things that we have to pay in our day-to-day life, and allows us to do all of these things with joy and confidence to know that our relationship with money is in a healthy place. And I hope that's where you'll find yourself at the end of this course. Now, this is just the starting point. There's still a lot of work yet to be done, but I hope this has equipped you to go forward to have a much better relationship with money and to truly make wise decisions with it.
Hello, friends. Welcome back. And I guess it's welcome back to me because I've been gone for a few weeks. I know that you and Nate have been spending some time together talking about finances and getting really practical. When I think about really this course, I think about health and financial health, really a healthy view of money. And that is the way we think about it, a healthy mentality about money. And I think that means making the right decisions. How do I decide to do what's right? Because at the end of the day, it really is your choice. And then finally, healthy habits. What do I do with my money? How do I live? And it comes down to, we only truly believe that which moves us to action. I think about people in my own life, and you've got these people in your life. We all do. People that have the right view. People that have made the right choices, and people that have over time lived out the right habits. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that, wow, if I just follow these principles, I'm going to get rich? Not necessarily. But what it does mean is that you will have the kind of satisfaction, the kind of healthy mindset that God wants you to have. And there's a good Bible word for that. It's contentment, being content, knowing how to be abased is the Bible word, how to abound, knowing how to manage what God, the owner, has given to you, the steward, and how to bless other people. I think about one man that I knew years ago, still know him, but worked with him pretty closely years ago, who was very successful, is very successful, businessman, from a worldly standpoint, multimillionaire, and yet to see the way that he lived, the kind generosity that he gave to children, working in a junior church program, blessing people anonymously, helping in big ways with our building program at our church, and thinking back to, wow, a healthy view, healthy decisions, healthy habits, and how that translates into kingdom work and blessing others. But then I think about another lady that I knew years ago, she's with the Lord today, who didn't have a whole lot of resources. In fact, she probably just lived on Social Security income, but she always had lollipops in her purse. She always had an apple waiting for the mailman every day. She just took the resources that God had given her, over which she was a very faithful steward, and blessed people. Remember what we said? It's not about what you have. It's about what you do with what you have and why you do it. And my belief is this: if we'll be faithful to God's financial principles, if we'll operate according to a Bible-inspired and informed why to our life, well, there's no telling the blessing that we can be to our own family and to the people that call us friend and influence in their life.
So of course, we hope that you've been helped by this course, and we understand that this is not the end of the road. This is the beginning of a lifelong journey. We want you to continue to learn, to grow in your financial management. Are there any resources that you would recommend for folks to take advantage of as they continue to learn and grow in their finances?
Well, sure. I mean, at the risk of sounding spiritual, I would say the best resource is the Bible. The Bible has so much to say, as we have learned, about just how to manage money. So I would just say, as you read your Bible, pay attention. Pay attention to what God says to you about resources. You'll be amazed. And share your thoughts. I'd love to hear them as God teaches you things. But I would say number 2, The Treasure Principle by Randy Alcorn it's a short read. You can just sit down in one sitting. It is a principle that every single person needs to get. And I hope you'll read that book, The Treasure Principle. Master Your Money by Ron Blue. If you have liked this course and liked the whole approach of Bible principles, but really practical insights, then you'll love that book, Master Your Money. And then finally, and you wouldn't say this, so I'm going to say it for you, that is, listen to this guy's podcast, Financial Pathway. Over 140 episodes so far, and really practical advice. Even some of the things about which we've spoken in this course are there, fleshed out, maybe even a little bit more detail. So we'd love to have you join the podcast if that would be something you'd be willing to do.
So it's been 8 lessons. We've covered a lot of ground, and there's been a lot of things that we've talked about. Let's bring it full circle. Let's finish where we started. Matthew chapter 6. Verse 21. Bring it home for us.
So Matthew 6:21, first of all, where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. And we've talked a whole lot about our treasure, the resources God has given us. Let's face it, most of us watching this or consuming this content, by world's standards, we're rich people. God has given us great treasure. But what decisions are we making? Because at the end of the day, God's the owner, right? We are the managers. And as we make good, sound, Bible-informed decisions in our life, it really carries our heart with it. And over time, right decisions, right habits, right heart. And our heart for you is that this would help you be all that you can be for God. That you would stand before Him one day and know that your resources, money of which is just one, your life, your talents, your time, that all of it has been invested in things that really matter. So that when you'll stand before Him, you'll see that investment instead of regretting that you didn't invest for the Lord.